In the 192nd Block Talks, we speak with Harry Horsfall, co-founder and CEO of Flight3, who gives us his take on zero bullshit Web3 marketing. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. All right, everybody, I am here with Harry Horsfall, who's going to tell us who he is and what he does with blockchain. Harry, welcome to Block Talks.
Awesome, Mauricio. Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to be on a UK podcast. Yeah, my name's Harry, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Flight3, and I'm the community manager of Zebu Live. I've been lucky. I've been playing around with blockchain, I guess, as you call it, for a long time now. And with Flight3, what we're trying to build is sort of a hybrid of a Saatchi and a Saatchi meets Web3 degen. And out of that comes a high-end agency that is ready for the future. If we look at like what our North Star is, what we really believe, we believe there's going to be a WhatsApp of Web3. I don't mean another social app. We don't really need another social app, but a product that is so damn good, everybody is using it without any jargon because they want to join the group chat and go for play paddle or have a pint, etc. So that's really what we're doing with Flight3, and we're very, very lucky to be turning 4, which I know you've been in the space a while. 4 years in one project is a bit of a stint, and excited for the future.
Awesome. Can we kind of rewind a little bit and kind of uncover your origin story? Like, where were you when you first heard of crypto? What were you doing? What was the thing that brought you into the industry?
Yeah, so the thing that really dragged me down the rabbit hole, I was at uni actually, so it was 2011. We're messing around on the internet. No real idea what I'm a marketer by trade, and no real idea about the tech or anything. And someone at uni is like, "Wow, you can get this Bitcoin. Follow this Reddit guide," and that was all kind of working. We were messing around with it for a little bit, and then I was running a music festival at the time, and as music festivals get bigger, they actually make less money. So at this point, I then became an intern at a VC firm, and while I was doing the festival and the music events on the side, and that's when I ran my first sort of Bitcoin event. I booked a guy called Paul Gordon, who ran CoinScrum, which was the first ever Bitcoin meetup in London and one of the most famous early meets. When it was a real collector, we just got back from Dubai, and there's now a meetup for every different part of crypto. And because I think sometimes the problem is when people don't understand something and they haven't used it, it sounds more complicated than it was. But I studied economics and politics, but when he explained to me, and I love the concept of self-sovereign, being a self-sovereign individual, I live in London, but I view myself as a global citizen rather than just the constraints. And when he explained to me, and my head went, wow, 7 billion people, 21 million coins, we are this early, bang, bang. And because like I say, I'm not I have a lot of conversations with very, very clever devs, and they're like, but how's this going to work? Why is this? I'm not the person that's thinking about the detail. I'm not, whoa, and thinking of the possibilities of what could be created. And so I was transfixed. I was in that, that stage where anyone that would listen to me, I was trying to tell them about 2013. And then, of course, Mt. Gox happened, and it was bang. I was like, maybe I am that idiot. I was torn apart by very, very clever older people, whether that's, and so for me, it was, I was then running an event with one of the top founders in the UK, Brett Hobbiton, who made lastminute.com, and he runs an event called Founders Forum. And then I met Nick Kerry, who is CEO of blockchain.com, which was, I think, the first wallet, one of the first wallets. He was just going through a few $100 million raise. And I was like, Nick, we're in 2015-16 now, and the halving has brought the price back to old 2013 highs. So I think around $1,000-ish at this point. I'm like, this time I'm not going to lose my cool. And I'm like, we got to go in. And I was like, Nick, please. Badgered him on email 4 or 5 times. He eventually agreed to go for coffee, and he's like, listen, at the moment I just don't have a role for you. I just need devs. I need to build this thing. We don't need marketing. And that took that from that moment I knew that I had to be in the space. And it took about a year later I saw a newswire saying that Luno was the fastest growing exchange. Called them up, and at this point you have to remember they were done really well from the last run. Exchange is print money, we all know that. They'd done really well from the last run, and they were trying to hire all these Google, Facebook, you know, those types of quality devs, and having to bribe them on 3x salary. Like, have you heard of Bitcoin? No, I haven't, but like the money's good, I'll join. And then suddenly I rock up on the door and I'm like, please give me a job. And they're like, okay. And they're like, and so joined and had an amazing time. You know, we went from 800,000 users to 10 million users is the biggest. It's sort of the Coinbase of Africa. So Nigeria, Malaysia, South Africa, the key markets. And it was amazing. We built a documentary, like what's your penny drop moment, went around the world speaking, you know, the time trying to speak to all these people, like what was your penny drop moment? And that was a really amazing sort of first insight into, it was a very beginner friendly platform. And obviously the hard things exchanges suffer with when they want to be regulated like Luno is the CEO Marcus was right. He didn't want to do a CZ and just add everything, and you know, and so we were kind of running in circles. And at that point, I was wanting to go more and more into alts, and you know, you never know where we are at the moment. Maybe they were right. Bitcoin is the only thing, but so yeah, so that really gave me the grounding, and then from there I launched a few projects, which all sort of amalgamated in that I'm not very good at development, and out of this I realized I liked the marketing side, and that's where I really sort of we started to hit our groove, and you know, we started the agency, and that's really the sort of the story. And now, you know, I just get so inspired when I speak to all of these people that are not talking about a white paper or just a meme coin, but actual utility. And I mean, you know, there is some moments, and I see this in my journey, that, like, you know, I had my doubt in 2014 in the Mount Gox, and you know, when 2022 was obviously the big moment, wasn't it? You know, we just had Luna, Celsius, FTX, and the morale and this was just so low. And I see people drop off at those points, but I think my belief and my hope is that we are going to build something that's going to make the world better, and I'm here for the long run.
I love that. And I love that you're pursuing this with such a passion. Now, you probably have seen some pretty damn things, like things that made you question maybe we shouldn't be building this um over these many years. I mean, being an OG and all. So other than Mt. Gox, what was the maybe one or two, maybe three um episodes where you felt like maybe we're not building the right thing. Maybe we're misusing the technology and we should do better. What were these examples?
When you start to get like maxis coming, because I'm a maxi minimalist in the sense that I love the idea, but the moment that I'm wrong, I'm happy to pivot to something that's going to work because I want the right outcome rather than to be right. And I think sometimes when we had, you know, the sort of all of the Bitcoin against the ETH, you know, and it's almost so tribal, and it makes you think, like, is this an Animal Farm moment? Are we taking away authority from the old system, but are we any better? And that was a very morally challenging part. Like, should we get all this power, and should this new level of wealth be created for like a new group who are not from the establishment, but would that actually be better for society? I think for me the hardest time, although in 2013 I lost, you know, 80% down, it was like, you know, I was only 20 at the time. It was a few $1,000s, you know, so it wasn't that impactful. 2017, 18, it was obviously boom, straight up. And it was an interesting moment at $19,700. That was a very interesting place to be. But again, when it went back down $6,000-7,000, it was okay, because I was a long-term holder. I think 22, it really hit us because for the first time when the market went down, it hit the industry so hard, and it hit, like, we still had all of our costs. And I think as a leader, I wasn't really ready to understand that, where thought we'd re-win the work, that when Binance and SBF had their CZ and SBF had their fallout, and then FTX went down in about 4 days. And at this point, got to give a big shout out to Tether, by the way. 12 years they've been fudded relentlessly, and they survived for all of those 12 years. And it looks like at the moment they are in a really good, like I say, I don't know the ins and the outs. I'm not shilling Tether. I don't work for Tether. It's not an ad. But FTX had 5 minutes, and then when we're looking back through what's going on, the QuickBooks, the all of this stuff, you're like, wow, maybe we don't like nice things. And because he was the poster boy of crypto, he'd paid off all the government people or whatever he was doing, and he was on the cover of Forbes, and we're like, oh, maybe this is all thingy. So I think those moments, they damage real builders who are trying to build stuff. But overall, I'm internally optimistic. I still think, like, you have to remember, we've dealt with telling people that this is real, and we've had to go in. I do a lot of lobbying and policy work, and trying to put. If you go to an MP and go, the TPS on this new ZK product is this, and it's going to, all the nodes, they're going to be like, wow, whatever. If you go, do you want foreign investment? Do you want jobs in your constituency? They're like, oh, I like this. What's the step? So I think overall, I'm optimistic on what we can build, and I think some kid in Harvard is going to be like, can you believe these boomers were doing transactions like this, and certifying it there, and I was speaking to someone that was having like local nodes and far away nodes for short transactions, and it was like so much of what we were doing was solving problems that we didn't know this solution of. And I love the infinite machine, and hearing about Gavin and Charles and Vitalik in the early days, all huddled around in a flat in Switzerland, in a 1-bedroom flat, like spending 4 years trying to get this license to make sure ETH had that strong base, that strong regulatory base that won't be able to be hit for a while, but it took them a long time. And I think now there's so much more clarity about, we got Mika coming in Europe, England's kind of out of Europe, but probably will adopt Mika, but is also looking at what's happening in the US. So I think for builders, they can actually get back to building rather than worrying about, right, how do I do this? How do I navigate this? Are the establishment going to rock up at my house with Uzis?
I find it interesting because, in my personal experience, I probably spent more time with lawyers over the last 10 years than I have spent with engineers, which is not good. We're building things. We're not supposed to be advocating for policy. That's not what we are. But then again, when you start to shake the paradigm, that's where the reactions come. And I really want to double click into your recent experience with policymakers, regulators, and whatnot. What has been the change in their stance over the last few years in your experience?
You see, the really interesting thing in the change of stance comes from twofold. One, we have incredible businesses, and I'm talking incredible businesses like Coinbase, like Cardano, like Solana, who have hired Goldman Sachs 20-year. No, I'm very passionate, and over the years I've had to learn to tone it down with knowing who you're talking to, but I still am a 30-something startup guy. So on the crypto side, we've got these Fazal, the chief legal officer, chief compliance officer at Coinbase, who we're working with via, Katie Harris, and they've been in the White House. They are 20, 30 years in Goldman Sachs. They speak their language, and the change. I remember when we had our first lawyer, and we were with a partner, and the intern was having to interpret what it all meant. And what's happened is you on the crypto side, you've got the likes of the Coinbases of the world hiring world leading talent with trying to be a very regulated, responsible approach, because we've always got that, we've got to protect innovation, but we've also got to protect consumers. So it's always a tricky balance that, if you go too far on protecting consumers, you destroy regulation. So on the crypto side, and then the second point to that is, stable coins work, don't they? You can now pay anyone anywhere quickly, efficiently, cheaply. Look, what have the banks been doing? The fact that it could possibly take 2 to 5 business days shows that they were just getting fat and greedy and enjoying having that money in their thing. So that's off topic. The second point is, remember, we grew up at the start of LimeWire. So I was on the school bus going to the football matches, and I'll be like, please, can I borrow your CD? Or can I get, so I grew up when music was a real luxury, and I had to go away and save a week to try and buy 1 CD or 2 CDs because I wanted the new CD to listen on the bus. Of course, LimeWire came along, and suddenly we could get everything. Any song you wanted, any point, you didn't have to get the whole album when you only wanted the 2 songs you were hooked on. And what we saw in the music industry, and there's a famous meme of law enforcement trying to stop streaming, and it's like a tiny gate in the field, and it's this tiny, and the reality for to stop Bitcoin, and even now with Elon doing whatever Elon's doing in space, you'd have to turn off the power of every single country, and you'd have to get consensus from every single country to ban it. Even China can't ban it, and they've banned pretty much everything else. So the reality is they can stick their head in the sand, and they tried to do that for a long time. I remember, forgot his name, Larry Fink, CEO of Goldman Sachs. 2017, smashing crypto, but the reality is that if you set rules that don't make sense and everyone is starting to use it, you lose your authority. So I think now that people are building real stuff that's really working, and you're starting to get these grown-up businesses, Solana are really good. They've got an institutional team. They're very sharp, sort of New York style, very, very presentable, calm, and not we're going to make a meme coin, Trump style. Thanks, Trump. So I think the combination of those two, the maturity of the tech, which is taken, and we often look at the adoption curve of where we're still in 1999 of where the internet was. It's still not Wild West is the wrong word, but we're still at a point where a lot of this VC money is going to zero. But I still believe out of it, we are going to get our Netflix, Amazon, Facebook. So I think those two combos together have really changed. And the final point is there's a bit of a race going on. So certain countries that confiscated Bitcoin from certain people, suddenly they're looking at their wallet and going, guys, that Bitcoin we confiscated, we've now got $3 billion of it. Wow, this is really interesting. And so the Swiss are very keen to, the sort of digital watch market has really hit, not the luxury Swiss watches, because you're always going to want those, but everyone is getting an Apple Watch or a Garmin or a Samsung watch. And Switzerland wanted to really protect its banking heritage. And you've seen them say, look, guys, we're not going to say this is legal, but we're not going to say it's illegal. Here's a sandbox. You've got 4 years. We won't backdate, test, innovate, don't do anything too silly. And then we'll learn the rules together. You have to remember that a protocol like Cardano or Solana or Coinbase are paying serious salaries, the type of people that are going to go and try and regulate against that, they don't have the same knowledge, the same passion yet. Malta is an example of a country that's really moved quickly. They've got their whole economy is based on human capital. So they've got to make rules that attract good entrepreneurs. And I feel like that race, before I used to, because I grew up getting, every time there was a FUD article, someone would send it to me like, oh yeah, India's banned crypto, da da da. And so when you have the likes of Switzerland, Lisbon, certain states in Wyoming starting to go progressive, again, then other politicians can talk to other politicians. They're like, oh, well, maybe we should look at it, rather than the sort of like quite entrepreneurial tech entrepreneur who they are worried by their incentive.
Yeah, and I like that I think you angled this in a much better light than I would, because you said this is a race. So when I talk about it, I usually equate this to the new geopolitical battleground, because it attracts, as you said, investments, talent, innovation, and ultimately prosperity. And hopefully now, as you exemplified, I think there is enough dialogue between the incumbents and the regulators and the innovators, so that there is some degree of healthy provocation into these are the possibilities. There is demand on the institutional side, because clients were like, oh, these kids have made all this money over the last 12, 15 years. Why are we not playing in the same sandbox? And then they go to Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, like, I want some of that too. Why are you not offering me digital assets, which is the industry name now? And they're like, oh, well, look, yeah, we can't because the regulator. And now everybody's like, why can't the regulator regulate this? So I think it takes time, and we also don't want regulators moving fast and breaking things. We do not want that. We can't afford that. It's hard enough without it. But I think the stance is changing, and it's like people say, right? First slowly, then all at once. And I think the fact that there are now at least two different, or maybe three different schools in terms of the regulatory approach. One is the Singaporean school, which is like experiment, try it out, talk to the industry, let's pilot this, let's pilot that, which I wholeheartedly attribute this to Sopnendu Mohanty, who was the head of the MAS until very recently. So that is one. Then there's the European UK school, which is let's get really good at regulating things. We don't know if it's a better regulation, but it's certainly more regulation. And then you have the school that pretty much is the US market, which is let's just deregulate as much as we can. And then when things crash, we'll go and try and fix it, which is what we saw a few cycles on the traditional finance. I was in the middle of one of those. Not fun, do not recommend. So these are the three schools that I see in terms of regulation, and I'm happy to see that this, because crypto is global, they're going to have to find some common ground really quickly. Otherwise, they're going to have to live through what we call regulatory arbitrage. But enough about regulation. Let's talk about the cool stuff. So what were the really? I mean, you mentioned about Luna. What were the other cool things that you participated, you helped grow? Give me a few of these examples that kind of were hallmark points in your journey in crypto.
Yeah, so I think TGs are always a really fun moment. I think one of the tricky things we have as builders is that if we're doing an IPO, and if we look at like Uber. I was a very early Uber user. It changed my life. I used all the VC money for 4 years to basically travel around London for free. It was £4 to go from one side to the other in a luxury car, and I had all the referrals. But the secret of Web3 marketing to today is to being able to create FOMO and hype in a team and in a product that their idea is coming, because there's obviously like there's a mix of like startups are destined to fail. Our role as startup founders is to change the odds that the company's going to fail. And if we look at one thing I'm really proud of and loved creating was the super team. So we started working with Solana, like, right in the heart of the crash. Solana's at $9, and Solana are like, we don't care about the price, we care about the builders. They really, really care about builders. And they were like, how are we going to support the builders? Because we don't want to just give out grants at the moment, because again, then you're backing startups and it's a VC. So what we helped create in Germany and the UK were like setting up real hubs where we built a weekly meetup. All the builders came together, helped each other. We trained the projects for a global hackathon, and then the winners got the prize. What foundations have a lot of funds, obviously, because they made their tokens and they're well capitalized. But also what governments struggle with, when you have lots of capital, how do you allocate it to prevent bad actors? How do you go through that? Because you can have like a soft rug where someone's trying really hard, they just don't have the experience to get it, and then you've got just pure rug where people are just trying to get that free capital. And what it did is, yes, it's made lots of great projects come out of that, but it created a global community where people met up, they helped each other, they built in public. We shared our skills, the dev skills, the product skills, the marketing skills. You had Web3 is not about vanity metrics of how many, so annoying when VC's like, you need 100,000 Twitter followers. Like, bro, if your product is a high-end institutional product, what is 50,000 users in Malaysia going to do for your product? It looks great and it looks popular, but it's thing. So I think the super team was a really, really exciting sort of movement, and as it's gone to 27 countries now, it's really building. And I think that playbook of institutions giving back to those builders, because at that stage, a $2,000 grant, $5,000 grant, $10,000 fast grant is almost more effective than a $500,000 investment, because then you're on the runway, aren't you? And so it's keeping them going, getting them ready for the launch. I loved building my events. ZB Live is one of, like, it's my baby, and it started. We're all in COVID. I struggled to stay inside anyway for a long time, and we basically threw it together in 4 to 5 weeks, and we called up everyone we knew, and and seeing that grow and seeing the level of people rock up, having the head of Coca-Cola come and talk about their Web3 strategy, talking to Man United about their Web3 strategy, as well on the same time having someone from like Circle and Gemini talk about their thing. It's amazing to see that community and all the different, back when we first met, 2013, it was like, oh my God, you don't think I'm a freak? Now it's like, all right, so what are you doing? Are you in staking? Are you in DeFi? Are you in GameFi? Are you in NFTs? Are you in fashion? And seeing all these different factions start to form, and like that, it's why I say there's a lot of value in general events, because there's a big trend at the moment that the ecosystems are like, you know what, we don't want to go to a general event. We're going to go build our own little summit and be our own little community over on this side, and we're just going to have our ecosystem projects. We're just going to, and that can be a little bit like isolating. And so when you remember that we're all, and because we're still, obviously there is, tribes and people that love this chain and that chain and this EVM, and I like Rust, you like Solidity, blah, blah, blah. There is a little bit of that still going, and, that may be above my pay grade. But deep down, people are still in a space where, like, bro, if you build that bridge, that allows me to then wrap this token, and whoa, and I can, and we're still in that stage where, like, we need to take market share of the existing world, the amount of blue ocean. And so I think when we get that moment where we all meet and we're like, we are actually here to create something good. I can help you, I can help you. I'll connect you. And I love seeing those bits in motion, and seeing it grow, and slightly more and more sophisticated. I mean, this year we're definitely seeing in London TradFi coming, because when I asked everyone about Ethereum in DevConnect, I was making a content series. I was like, what's Ethereum to you? trying to edit that together in a coherent video was wild because everyone gave a different answer of what, Ethereum is limitless, what it could be to whoever it is. But if you're, and you said it earlier, we were kids that would win a few $100s. There's not real money in a global money market. And when you think of TradFi, they've got billions of dollars that are sitting around. And if you explain to them, because most dollars are digital, aren't they? So everyone understands, if you got 1 million, if you're lucky enough to have $1 million, you don't have $1 million under your bed. You've got $1 million on a screen, and you're hoping it gets some interest. So if you tell people it's USDC or USDT or whichever one you like, DAI, or maybe that rebranded to Make a DAO, cool, really cool early project. But if you're like, this can do this and it gets this yield and it's fully secure, people are getting it. And I think those moments are, I think they're moments that like people are like, wow, this really is happening, isn't it? It's real, and I can see how I can understand it without having to understand it, because you're a clever product guy. You talk to the dev people. You're probably building long roadmaps, very, very complex stuff. And ZK for me, and my mentors, he was very, very early consensus, and he helped build Matic. And he told me about ZK, and I was like, whoa, ZK, and then, the way I think about it is, my first boss said to me, if you have a marketing strategy and a digital marketing strategy, you won't exist in 10 years. And that's pretty much happened, because in the olden days you had above the line, which is, bus ads, tube ads, anything that's not digital. Then you had digital marketing, and that was, Facebook ads, Google ads, all of that stuff. Now we do through the line. So we will have some bus ads that lead the funnel into a Facebook ad, Twitter ad, eventually onto a website and a conversion. And I think if you think about it, like renting a car is hard. Oh my God. Yes, this is my credit card. Yes, this is my driving license. Yes, this is where I live. Yes, I'll sign the 4,000 documents. Yes, you can photocopy it. And if you think about ZK and being able to wrap everything into like a magic box, and the nodes can verify that I am over 18, I do live in London, this is my Amex, and then I can just send that data to Eurocar, and it's proven. They don't have to store it, they're quicker. And I think that's those moments where everything comes in together. I mean, a tough time for me was when jumped on Rangers TV and we were making an NFT for them, and they're like, what are you? Because I think that early stage of NFTs was quite bad, wasn't it? Like, it was the wrong audience. When we raise money, I love. It's kind of buying a scratch card going in on an NFT. Like, we did it. We had fun testing around the tech. Don't think NFTs are the best tool for fundraising. I think they've got a lot of use case in like global sports audience, and membership and tickets and property law and all that kind of stuff. But the PFP craze was a fun craze, but I don't think that audience, if you didn't buy ETH cheaply or whatever, Sol or Sui now, whatever token, if you didn't buy it cheaply, to spend $1,000 on something that's probably just not going to zero, and you're not in Web3, is not a good entry point. And so, I like what Man United did when they gave away their NFTs for free, and then you could upgrade them and you could win prizes. I think it was a better adoption curve. So I think, yeah, overall, I think there's a lot of moments where we're still testing that messaging about how we talk to normal people. We're having this lovely chat, and I don't care whether I'm on AWS or Google's web service, and I think sometimes we are so passionate about crypto and about what it can do and how it can work that we talk about what it is and not why. And when we start to talk to why, and if you look at the leader of our space, CZ, the man just ships. He ships and he ships and he ships and he ships and he ships, and like, wow, there's another product every day. Every time I'm logging on, I'm like, whoa, and the speed at which they have just shipped product is almost something that like is where the rest, I mean, and as I know, I'm sure this ZK, everyone was obviously following ZK Sync, and we're kind of waiting for this ZK moment to happen. Everyone knows it makes sense. I don't think anyone is quite like smashed it out yet, so that normal people are using it, not just geniuses.
I think it leads us into a usual question that I ask my guests, which is, as an industry, what is the one thing that we must fix now so we don't waste the next 20 years and then look in hindsight and realize, oh, we didn't fix that one thing and now we're back to square one. What's, in your opinion, what is that one thing and why?
So I think it has to be the talent, doesn't it? Like the talent density of the space is the thing that's gonna, and Jim Collins is like, good to great. If you get the right people on the bus in the right seats, we'll drive this bus somewhere amazing. And I think there's a lot of talented people, and now we just need to get them in the right places, in the right teams, building the right things. And I think we'll figure it out, And I really think when building my own company and when we're working, when we take on clients, and I hear the guy's a third-time founder and he's worked with 5 agencies, I'm like, yes, he knows what the agency's role is. I'm your personal trainer. I'm here to make you do those push-ups. I'm here to tell you about your technique. I'm here to make sure you turn up 3-4 times, whatever your schedule, 3-4 times a week. I can't take your product, because at the end of the day, product's the only thing that really matters. Marketing is to get eyeballs on a product, eyeballs to tell a narrative, get people excited about it, put it in front of people. But we all have ADHD, and if you tell me about this amazing product and you put me in your funnel, and there's nothing for me to click on or sign up for, I'm gone. And you have to remember, re-engagement is more expensive than engagement. So the first time I engage you, you get benefit of doubt. The second time I was like, oh, last time it wasn't a very good, I didn't get my dopamine hit, I didn't. And so I think if we can get that talent to really, and it's coming, isn't it? Because it's not an issue of cash. Like I wouldn't say that. I would say, obviously you are, when you're competing with a Netflix or a Facebook or a Google, like I'm sure those devs are very, very well paid. But if we think about the democratization of the world, like most Web3 companies, like we're remote, aren't we? Like we normally base somewhere, but it's a decentralized global world where top talent can rise. So you don't need to live in San Francisco. But I don't think it's let's say we want a ZK engineer right now, like the best in the world. They're probably already working on the 6 other projects. And they're probably going to want a lot, So I think upskilling our, I must admit, I'm mainly in the marketing community, and in the marketing community we have Safari. It's like group of now 700 marketers. We're all coming together, we're building courses, we're educating each other, we're making content, we're really trying to bring the next level of marketers at a place where when they get hired for a role, because we're all faking it, like I've had some moments where I'm like, right, I remember I was very successful project, actually one of the fastest sales on CoinList, and I was working, and I was data indexing, so like Google for blockchain, basically. So you can search various data really quickly, and when you're pulling your equations, I was like, right, how the hell are we going to tell the world about this? And I had to quickly understand it, and I'd be like, right, okay, got it. Google for blockchain, that makes sense. Boom, it's going to be fast. Loved it. And I think there's one thing that, yes, and I may not be like super intelligent, gigabrain dev type, but I have dedicated 12 years to studying the space, reading. I've read most of the literature. And so if you can't explain your idea to me in a way, when I'm also being paid to listen, and I can't then explain it down to my team who can explain it to a designer, it's a slight issue on your side as much as it is their side. But I always think of those espresso machines that you put the pods in. You they're all a bit different, but you can always just about work out how to do it. And I love the Midnight White Paper. It was a very it was readable, wasn't it? I mean, if we look back to the Bitcoin white paper, it was a readable doc. It was still technical, but you could read it. So I think that talent of marketers, that talent of developers, that talent of policy people, as that improves, I think that will solve a lot of the problems. Because final point on that is, I remember when we were trying to audit a smart contract, and it was like 20 grand just to audit a vesting contract, which costs us a lot to make. Whereas now there's probably a library of audited vesting contracts. You pull it in, you fork it. ETH isn't $100 a transaction. So I think all of that will make it easier.
And in terms of welcoming new people in the industry, I mean, you're an OG. You probably have educated people to come into crypto. What is your usual approach? Is there anything you tell them to read first or to go watch for? What's the path you give people when they approach you to, hey, how do I onboard in your industry?
Yeah, so I think everyone needs to find their own like moment that they want to hook that they want to get involved in. Like everyone's got a different hook. Of if you're in Argentina, if you're living in London, yeah, Revolut is a great app. The pound is pretty damn stable. If I pay you £1,000, you can go to bed and it's £1,000. I think if we look in South Africa, where I spent a lot of time, the rand is got. I was there 2-3 weeks ago, and the rand is 30% down on what it was, last month. Bitcoin and stable coins and access to the dollar is a really interesting thing. If you look at it, same in Buenos Aires, if you look in Web3 in London, it's more of an investment. I think Bitcoin billionaire with the amazing story with the Winklevoss twins, how they made Facebook and then they own 1% of Bitcoin supply. And I love that guy because he wrote The Social Network. It's a real story. I think the infinite machine is great learning. But I think the best learning, if I'm truly honest, is to don't think about it. Go away. It depends if they're wanting a job or just to play around with it. But Coinbase is so good now. Kraken is so good now. Go away and play around with it. Buy your first $1, $10. Do a coin, do a Coinbase earn. Akshay, a really good leader in our space, always says your first $1,000 in crypto should be earned. The dangerous is if you don't have many savings and you've got $500 of savings and you put it all into Bitcoin and the next day it's 30% down, it can be quite demoralizing. Whereas if you follow the quest, do the earns, and you're like, oh, I'm learning. And if we think about like NFTs, like studied economics, non-fungible token, I barely even understand what that means. And whereas actually if you go on OpenSea to this day, you can use a credit card and it's really an e-commerce experience, isn't it? Click, want that picture, buy, in my basket, it's in my wallet. So I think now, I remember clearly 2017 when we were trying to buy alts and all the exchanges had manual KYC and they were like, you can't come on, and it was bedlam. But they've come a lot further, and I think you have to be here for more than just to get like rich. There's easier ways to get rich. Go into real estate in the US, or banking, very established routes. Because I think it takes a little bit of time to get your head around it. And if it was really, really easy, everyone would just be like, right, done. So I think if you really want to learn about it, and I think, and the final sort of counterpoint to that is I think AI offers a very interesting sort of proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps with the amount of content that's available through AI, it also helps learning quite a deal. Now, final question before we break, before I let you go. What do you do to keep yourself healthy in an industry that works 24/7, 36 days of the year?
It is a challenge, and I think it is 24/7. And I think I feel lucky that I get to. I mean, I think we're talking about, this year's been mental. It's like Denver, Poland, Dubai, Paris, London, Dublin, and I think that affects your like your routine. It affects, there's a lot, often free beers, there's often parties, etc. So while you're working can be tricky. So, but I love paddle and I love CrossFit. I know you're a big CrossFitter. I've trying to get to woman RX weight, which has kind of been my goal for the last 2 years. And I finally learned all of the techniques, can do my double unders and leg toes to bar, and so I've learned all the techniques. I'm now starting to get the weight, and I think I love to find a CrossFit wherever I go into a city. I think that really helps. And then I think paddles. I now want to try and network more in the morning, and then do work in the evening rather than. But I'm an outgoing person, and I get energy talking to cool people, and I think that's. Well, I feel very lucky that everyone speaks English. Wild, we can go anywhere in the mainly in Web3 and have all these conversations with all these people. So, yeah, I think trying to one of my main mentors tried to explain to me, because building a service business is really, really tough. We are funded by our own work, and I think not to get too high when you win, and not to get too low when you lose. And I think what blockchain gives you is that you're going to have a news, everything's soaring. Next day, Trump's putting tariffs. Next day, da-da-da. So I think trying to remain calm, the worst that happens, you go get another job. It all goes to zero and it's fine. The goal is health. But yeah, hopefully that's an okay answer.
Absolutely, man. Listen, we're about time, and it was such an interesting conversation. We talked before, but I think I never heard your story and the details of your journey, and thanks so much for sharing that. How can people keep tabs on you, Flight3, what you guys are up to, engage with you? What's the path there?
Yeah, so hopefully see everyone at ZB Live on 21st, 22nd of October. Trying to get 5,000 people to London. Trying to put London on the map. We've got most London people are coming now. Now we're trying to make this a global event. My goal is to save us having to go to Dubai, and we can get an Uber home rather than a 9-hour slog. And if people want to connect with me, I'm on Twitter at Harry Horsfall.
Awesome, my man. So hopefully we'll bump into each other, whether at Zebu or at one of the Flight3 events somewhere in the world, and we'll catch up more then, not on tape this time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. See you next time. Bye for now.
Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDropsPodcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or Zerox Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbun Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to Harry for being such a relentless OG and keeping up with crypto for these many years. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird, LFG.